it was probably 2 a.m. and writing out the Project 100. And the whole idea there was that we would buy, 100 units a year. And a big part of that was inspired by this one building that we walked through, and I was too scared to actually try and tie up on contract.
And one of the things to know, nobody sells you, like, not in my experience so far, nobody sells you these buildings that are cash flowing perfectly for you on day one. So we just pretty much figured that out of the blue, right? Like no other people it wasn't on the market. We didn't have competition. We kind of just brought it back from the dead. And all of a sudden, shit, we have a deal.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we catch up with my business partner, Jeff Wybo, and discuss our apartment buying business. So it's been a little bit since we were chatting about the deals we actually actively do in one of my businesses, but today we're going to bring Jeff on, who's a much more active business partner in that business. I'm relatively hands-off and passive now, but it is fun seeing that business grow and see the number of units stack. And we're going to discuss in today's video the very first large apartment deal we did together, which was buying a 11-plex and a 6-plex that were side by side, and how we were able to BRRRR that from 1.6 million to 2.7 million in under a year and a half, I think it was. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, and make sure we'll throw it in the video description down below. But if you want to see, Jeff Wybo also did his own video on this subject matter. We'll link to his channel as well, so you guys can jump over and watch it. But let's dive into today's video.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we've got Jeff Wybo on the channel. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me, Matt.
So I thought it'd be fun to just kind of chat about one of the deals we've done in our apartment buying business, as well as maybe even give some context, because this was the second deal we essentially ever did in the apartment buying business, and really the first real apartment deal that we did in the apartment business. And, the property, I guess, just to summarize it for everyone, we got a 17-unit parcel. And do you mind kind of breaking that down, what that looked like?
Yeah, for sure. So, everybody sees the fancy Instagram posts, so I'm happy to finally get this on Matt McKeever's channel and talk about it a bit. But yeah, there's a 17-unit parcel, and we would like that to be all under one roof. But for this one, it was 11 one-beds, and then kind of right beside it, there was a 6-plex, and they were all 2 beds, but then there was maybe one that was a bachelor. So that was our 17 units plus this parking lot. It was a little confusing kind of a deal, and we knew about it for a long time. I actually remember you wanted to buy it personally many, many years ago, probably for even less than we ended up buying it for recently. And I guess that's a story in itself, because always buy now pretty much, because Ontario seems to be going up and up. But we were in Toronto developing our corporation, me, you, Mitt, and Pierce Ant, and we decided, let's actually do something and not just say, hey, yay, we're a corporation, and let's make an offer. And you had said, well, remember this one building, the 17 units, let's put in an offer. So what did I do? I did my classic thing. I go onto the internet, I find out who the listing agent was before on this deal, and message them saying, hey, do you still know these owners? And if I put in an offer, would you show it to these people? And that's pretty much the secret sauce, all the stuff you see on Instagram. And how it's just, I ask questions to agents, and I don't even go around them to try to find the sellers. And we put in an offer, and I think you kind of helped me out at the time for what we should be offering. And we did $95K a unit, $95,000 per unit, and pretty much blanket offered. And Matt, how many people do you know, they need to know every single detail, the numbers. They're so caught up on so much stuff. Guess what? We never know. We just don't have the answers. But the beauty is, when they're big buildings, and the beauty is how we operate, we can get in there and do what we're going to do, as long as we can purchase it at a price per unit. So we deal with way more, probably similar amount of investors, but probably way more amount of investors now with your cash flow tribe. Everybody needs to know the cap rates and the expenses and everything. We never have this data. We have a rough idea of what Ontario rent is. We don't have the rent roll in front of us. We get to make blind offers practically. So we make an offer, 17 units, $95K a unit. And guess what? They're like, okay, let's do the deal. So we just pretty much figured that out of the blue, right? Like no other people it wasn't on the market. We didn't have competition. We kind of just brought it back from the dead, and all of a sudden, shit, we have a deal. And yeah, well, it wasn't an easy first acquisition for our corporation.
Yeah, and I guess just taking a step back and building upon it, I was just pulling up on my screen some data so that I made sure I got the dates right. So I think that it was originally put up for sale back in, like, it was late 2016. So we had known each other for about a year then. And we actually walked through the buildings, checked it out. And I was just looking it up because I wanted to make sure I got my numbers right. So originally back in late 2016, and the deal actually closed in 2017. I didn't buy it. We were too scared to actually go into it. And I remember us analyzing it back then. So I want to chat about how we analyzed it then versus how we analyzed it when we bought it. But it was originally listed for 1.155 million for the two buildings. So that was, again, in 2016. Again, for everyone, we ended up buying it in end of 2019 for 1.615 million, right? So, we, in theory, let me just make sure I get my math right here, but we could have got
we'll
it
crucify
for
you on YouTube if you make a math mistake. So
yeah, so
make sure you get it right.
$460,000 is what it cost us because we were too scared to buy it 2 years or 3 kind of years early. So just fascinating to see how that played out. But I remember when we originally walked through it back in 2017, I can remember us having a conversation in one of the apartments, and like just the amount of kind of fear that both of us had actually about like buying that building. Like we're like, okay, it's on boiler, that makes us feel comfortable, but like, what about summers? What about summers? Would the tenant be willing to live here without AC? And like we were just like getting in our heads about all these little things that like they're not bad ideas to think about, but like they're probably not like deal breakers, right? And
absolutely.
it's just so funny because then fast forward to 2019 when we actually put in the offer, we actually submitted that offer without walking through the buildings that like year. It had been 3 years since we'd seen the buildings, but our level of confidence just from the experience, right, of seeing so many buildings, walking through so many things. And yeah, that building and actually a different building that maybe we'll shoot another video on another day. There was 2 buildings back in late 2016, 2017 that I wanted to buy. I can remember going to one of my money partners back then. He was like, 70,000 a unit. That's just way too expensive, Maddie. You don't know what you're talking about. I was like, I don't know. I think we can get like $700-800 a month in rent for these buildings. And, it's wild to think how easy it is, even for us, to build up these stories or emotions around it and get scared because someone tells us something. But have they ran the numbers? Did they sit down? Did they really trust it? And back in the end of 2017, we actually like got out on marker board late one night and one late night of drinking, actually. It was probably 2 a.m. and writing out the Project 100. And the whole idea there was that we would buy, 100 units a year. And a big part of that was inspired by this one building that we walked through, and I was too scared to actually try and tie up on contract. So yeah, I just thought it was really fun to kind of give that context for everyone before even like getting into how the real deal came together. So I actually don't really remember. I remember us being in the office. I remember us sending it off, and I'm pretty sure they just like cold accepted it, right? Like
they didn't even counter. Maybe like they tweaked just some term or something, but like no price counter. And they're like, I'm like this. I was probably half ruining the deal because I was like, they like the price. Like, yeah, they like the price. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because we're happy to pay this price to get this product, right? This acquisition. And it's funny, you're just saying like 70,000 unit, 95,000 unit. And that was back then because things are even trending up higher now. Like remember how we were thinking one time, like what is a house worth? And like, there's 17 of these and we're getting them for 95,000 for 17. Like you can't buy a house for that. And here's the trick, guys. The rents aren't that far off of what a house actually rents for. So a 2-bedroom apartment in a 3-bedroom house are generally pretty close in rent, maybe just a couple $100 more. So we're finding a way better value to purchase large buildings than, 17 single family homes at $300,000 to $500,000, right? So that's kind of been our business model here in recently. And yeah, so we put that offer in and we got the deal. And I got to go do a walkthrough with the property manager, and things that probably would have scared us. Definitely not in the 2017 walkthrough, but then in the future walkthrough before we closed, one of the units even had like almost like a painter's tape taped around the whole unit with this sheet, and they're like, "Do we have to go in there?" And like, I'm like, "Yeah, we got to go in here." And the property manager didn't want to go in there at all. Basically, it was just a hoarding place, dog food everywhere, bugs and needles on the ground. The wave, and maybe you're gonna get this on YouTube, just like that warmth of summer. There could have been dead animals in there, who knows? And we bought that. And that became our problem to fix. And we didn't go after the seller because we kind of knew what we were getting into. That sucked. But the beauty is with these purpose-built type buildings, it's once you can get that out of there, it becomes a clean slate and we can renovate the properties. We're able to now, I don't know if you want to talk about it right now, but fast forward and refinance the properties for much more money. So to the novice investor, that hoarding experience and that, you know, stink, just brutal, and I have a video of it, just would have scared off a lot of people and that's the thing. A lot of people go to these properties and they want to like look over it. Now, like they want to look over every single part of it. Now I don't even do that at all, because once you learn how these big buildings work, like you were saying earlier, a boiler system, a flat roof, there's not too much more wrong within the unit, in my experience. There's going to be some electrical, so maybe you need to fix the electrical, and then there's some plumbing, and maybe you got to fix their tap. Other than that, it's mostly the building. So there will be capital costs, but then the interior stuff is usually just cosmetic. And we're going to gut these anyways. And we've been coining the term, and maybe someone else has had it, but we're coining the term Toronto condos. And we make these places gorgeous on the inside. So you might look at these buildings, you drive by them every day, ugly looking yellow brick buildings, red brick buildings. But on the inside, we're turning them beautiful. So we don't care if hoarders hoarded these units. Once we get them out, we're able to make them much better. And one of our strategies to get the high refinance was we furnish the units. And it's something we've been trying to do. And I have to fight my own team, my own rental agents sometimes when they're like, well, can somebody rent it without the furnishings? I don't like that, because I don't want the class of tenant, and hopefully this is just an investor channel, not the tenants watching this, because I will get some downvotes. Make sure you guys hit the like button. But I want a tenant that's not dragging their bed through the halls to put their bed in their rooms and their furniture and a U-Haul truck showing up. I don't want that. I just want them to show up with a suitcase and their MacBook computer and log on to the Wi-Fi and unpack their clothes and live. And what I've been finding is this gets a higher quality tenant that actually has a lot of money. They're doing something. They have a purpose of being in the city. They usually have a car, they have a job, and they like a furnished unit. And we don't want the people that will furnish their units, because these, in my experience, are the people that, you know, we're going to be going to the tribunals against for some reason. Usually the people that want a furnished unit and the ability to pay a higher value are just a very good tenant that we've had no issues with so far. So therefore our rent roll shows much higher, because I always get that pushback from the property managers and the rental agents. Oh, can we just take this person for $300 less? Well, $300 less on a refinance of a large apartment building can be the difference of $250,000 in a valuation. And that's what we're finding. So we're able to get the higher rent by giving the tenant a few more things: a bed, a furniture, iron, utensils, whatever. Almost like that Airbnb experience, but to a tenant who's moving in. They can still buy all their own artwork and do whatever they want to do, but their main ticket items are covered and they can just quickly move in and pay us their high rent.
Yeah. And then so building upon the refinance process. So if I remember correctly, it probably took us about just under a year and a half from like close to refinance. I think it was end of 2019. And then was it early this year or end of last year that we refied it? So during that period of time, Jeff, what did we all do, and how many units did we turn over? That's probably a great spot to start with.
Obviously, we'll talk right about this one, but it's been pretty much our MO for all our properties. We're pretty good at getting 50% turnover within 1 calendar year. I don't know how, but it just happens. Maybe because we're focused on it.
And we do kind of preemptively take this into consideration, right? So we knew that when we were closing on this deal, I think we got 2 units vacant, right? There was the terrible unit and one that was mid-reno.
Exactly. So one of the things I write a very clean offer so that a seller can accept my offer. It doesn't come with a lot of things to make them nervous. You know, I don't have a lot of asks. I say, so it's one of the things I do write in there. I say, we'll assume all the tenants. I don't want to assume all the tenants, but I know that's what the seller wants to hear, because definitely not going to get a 17-unit building vacant possession. We'll assume all the tenants. In the event of a vacancy, do not re-rent it. And they're like, oh. And then they sometimes call me and they'll be like, hey, sorry, unit 3 is moving out. I'm like, awesome. Like, that's perfect. We need that. Keep them coming. Vacancies are good. And I have to like continually tell property managers and sellers, no, that's a good thing, because they're usually nervous to tell me, because most people probably need that to qualify. But for us, we're actually better off having those vacancies the way that our corporation is built, and we've showed to the lenders like how we're doing this and our refi process. It's a positive for us. So yeah, we get 2 vacancies off the hop. We know that on day 1 we can get in there and start renovating those units and present them either in the short term for Airbnb, or in the long term re-rent them out to a higher class tenant for like over double the current rents at these buildings. And one of the things to know, nobody sells you, like, not in my experience so far, nobody sells you these buildings that are cash flowing perfectly for you on day 1. Like, nobody exits their giant multifamily building so that you can make money. So we have to purchase a problem and then turn it into a profit. And no one wants to hear that. They all, what's the cap rate? Let me see the numbers. It's like, those are good things to know. But the way we're able to refinance in 1 year is because we're putting a lot of work in that first 365. It is constantly trying to get to vacancies, whatever which way, natural or tenant buyout, whatever ways. Obviously, this year should be a case study, because it's like the hardest year probably ever to landlord. But we're getting through it and still getting 50% vacancies. So.
And so do you remember, was it about 9 units that we turned over in the 17-unit building, or?
Some version of 9 to half. Yeah. So I think that sounds right. So, you know, this 6.
And our average renovation there, we're putting in like a new kitchen, we're doing the flooring, all that stuff. And usually it's just under 20,000, would you say?
We try to keep it to 20. Yeah. So, and then if tenant buyout, it is 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 7,000, whatever. That adds on top of that reno budget, right? But then, so if we bought the units at $95K a unit, and then you're adding 30 grand on tenant buyout and renovation costs, and point of note, we have a full-time contractor on salary across all our buildings. I don't think we had it immediately starting this one. I think we were contracted.
It was about 6 months in, Yeah.
But now, so then there's those costs you'd have to long-term evaluate. But we're lucky, because of the high rent, able to show a way higher price per unit on the refinance and essentially BRRRR the properties. And it's everything, you know, this channel's taught you guys with the duplexes and single families and all that. And we're just implementing it at a way bigger level, and honestly a way easier level, because these purpose-built buildings, to me, they're just a lot of cement between the units. Sometimes it's wood, but I mean, like, they're kind of built like a hotel room, and we just got the hotel rooms and make them good. Versus if you buy in our city an older house, some of the houses in the city are 100 years old, and they have bad wiring and legalities from rental licensing. These don't apply. So it's a lot easier to go into these places and feel confident to make the big high offers, because you know what you can do for $20,000 within a unit to produce a way higher rentable unit in the future. So.
Yeah. So if we were just kind of like back of the envelope for the audience, you know, 1.6 and change, about 200,000, maybe turning over the units. And then as far as the actual buildings, the only big thing I remember us doing is the roofs, right?
Yeah. So one of the guys who's been on the channel, Accelerate, Mike Van Hout, did our roofs. That's a good ticket item, $30,000. And like,
That was
maybe
for one of them, right? I think, and then 15 for the other. I thought it
okay.
was, or
So yeah, because it was unfortunately two buildings on this parcel. Because
yeah.
I would have rather just had one. Okay, so $45,000. Um, and a lot. I deal with a lot of buyers in general, and that's like always a question. Like, how old is the roof? How old is the boat? Like, in reality, all these things are going to need to be replaced, your capital costs at one point. So
Hmm.
I don't know why people are so concerned on it. Like, do they think like, oh, I just don't want my first year to have these capital costs every single time they purchase the building? We're actually then able to show the appraiser that we fixed the roofs, and it usually gives us a bit higher of a value. And then the boilers were having some trouble, but I have a saying like we're never going to pay for a boiler. We're just going to go hit it with a hammer till it stops working. The managers wanted to get new boilers, and I just kept saying no, 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 no. But in
And
general,
again, timing sometimes a big factor here too, right? When you're putting a lot of capital in and refi is coming up, you're probably not going to really get the value out of that boiler. So it's almost more attractive to want to fix up the stuff that makes it look pretty and get the high value, and then you can do some of like the boring mechanical stuff once you get a bunch of your capital out as well.
exactly. And one of the things we haven't done, but I do want to look into, and maybe there's people that can comment that if they've done it, is eventually do the exteriors of the buildings. I don't know when in our city that will provide a higher valuation from the appraisers, but like definitely in Toronto, if you make the exteriors look good, you will get the higher valuation, even though that makes no sense, but it just kind of like aesthetically looks like a more modern apartment building rather than a 1960s block, 3-story walk up kind of a building. But yeah, those are easy things to put a little bit of cosmetic on the outside of a building to really spruce it up so that you live at, Flushing Gardens or something like that. And you can put a sign out front and people can really have some ownership of living in that apartment building. Something to look into in the future, but I don't really, as a real estate investor, I can't really determine what the appraiser would give us in a valuation price per unit. I don't think they care, but it might help for rentability in general to get the higher rent. So it's kind of a thing we still got to kind of figure out.
Yeah, and I remember when we originally bought and closed on the property, I think our rough mental math looked something like buy for 95 a unit, hopefully put 25 to 30 a unit into it, and hopefully the building's kind of worth 125 to 140 a unit. That's what I kind of remember us aiming for when we initially did it. Now, again, the market continued to stay hot while we bought, closed, and worked on this property. And I can remember at one point in time, maybe 8 months after we bought and closed ours, there was a nearby sale. I got super excited because it was like a 16-unit building or something like that, all one bedrooms, and it sold for 140,000 a unit. And so I was like, ooh, this is going to be a nice comp for us. So I'd love to just kind of walk the audience through how did everything come together at the end and what was our final appraised value.
Yeah, and that's important. If you're in this game and you notice another property sold for X, you keep track of that. And when you do have the appraiser come by, you do what you do. You tell them about that one because they might miss it, and you show them. So I think we got the appraisal back, some version of 2.7 million. Was what it was. So that definitely covered all our renovation costs and left us with some money. And at the time for this one, we had some joint venture partners, and then we were able to pay off our joint venture partners. So essentially, it was a free building, and we're just running it and operating it right now. And price per units continue to go up right now. And I don't really see multifamily in Southwestern Ontario going significantly lower at any time. I think it'll stabilize, but I mean, it generally just trends upwards throughout history. So,
Yeah. So essentially, again, that was about 158,000 a unit is what the appraisal came in for. And I think right around that time, there was actually a really huge parcel here that was sold in London for like 175 a unit. So it really does seem like we're continuing to see pressure on the average price per unit for these larger multifamilies.
and those higher 175s are usually elevator type buildings. Makes no sense, but that's just what it does. So we're finding a niche of staying away from elevators because it still trends close to that 175, and eventually it will. And then the elevator building will probably get pushed to 200 eventually, and we'll still just be kind of trailing behind it and using that as our, you know, future comp to, you know, trail. But yeah, not too shabby. Free building.
Yeah. And again, this took about just under a year and a half for us to execute. But again, this was something where we talked about it for years before we actually finally pulled the trigger and jumped into it. And, you know, while we were accumulating experience and just confidence during that period of time, I don't think we actually learned any one silver bullet that like gave us the confidence then to go do it. It was just a matter of taking it more seriously, right? Starting to map out our time, hold ourselves accountable, and then like actually go put in the work.
Yeah. And yeah, it wasn't easy because there was lots of financing challenges, you know, large multifamily, even lower multifamily. There's always something that comes up from lenders and stuff. And you just got to get through it in this business. There's no book you can read or anything to get really confident. You just got to push through and answer their questions and figure it all out. Like it's just, I noticed that a lot. Everybody wants to know what books are you reading for large multifamily? And I say the MacBook, like just to be a bit of an ass, but like, cause like there's nothing to read. You just got to do research, just figure it out and call people and text people and figure it out. There's just, it's always a little different. And now we're getting a lot more easier. Maybe we'll cover it on a different video, but that one was more traditional financing. So of course we were sweating right to the finish line. Can we close on this property? And I can't remember, maybe we needed an extension, something like that, but that always happens in this business and we got to deal with it. So problems are profits, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, real estate's a contact sport. The more people you come in contact with, just the more opportunities you're going to have, right? So for us, I view submitting that initial offer kind of blind as trying to buy a lottery ticket, right? Like if you don't buy a ticket, you're not in the game and there's no chance of you ever winning. So again, really appreciate you just coming on the channel, Jeff, and breaking down how our first like larger apartment deal went down in our new apartment buying business. If you guys want to follow along with Jeff on his journey, we'll throw a link in the video description down below to all Jeff's contacts. Make sure you jump over to YouTube, Instagram, all those good places.
Well, I have a video on the 17 units on my channel. So if you guys want to get over and watch that, it's what I made on a 17 unit building or something like that, whatever I titled it. So
awesome. We'll throw it in the video description as well. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks again to Jeff for taking the time to break down the deal. I hope you guys enjoyed this deal. I hope you got value from it, and let us know if you'd like to see more videos like this breaking down some of the bigger deals we've done. You know, they're starting to add up now. We've got, I think we were saying about 114 units currently under management with another 100 and whatever that was set to close. So really excited to continue to see this portfolio grow. So if you guys would like to learn more about it, let us know in the comment section down below.